What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. Anbernic's been making a run with these H700 SoCs in their handhelds, and they don't seem to be able to lose. They're probably bound for one. Well, now we have the new RG35xxSP, which we're only going to call the SP from now on, because there's just too many letters. It's exhausting. This is one of my top 5 most anticipated handhelds of this year. So does it meet the mark? Let's take a look. Full disclosure, I was actually waiting for the Mio Mini Flip, but you know, we've been waiting for what, a year on that thing? Hasn't come out yet. So Anbernic just said, screw it, we're gonna take you on and we're gonna release a flip before you do. Now, prior to this, the only flip that I had was the Powkiddy V90. That's not true. That's one of the flips that I had. My favorite flip that I had before actually was the Retroid Pocket Flip. This thing is phenomenal. I love this handheld to this day. I still use it all the time. Slides right in your pocket. Feels pretty good in there. It's actually thinner. It's thinner than the SP, but we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. As far as when it's closed and you throw it in your pocket, this just fits in really nice, and to still have shoulder buttons is really cool. But the GBA was one of the handheld consoles I didn't have as a kid, and I'd say that, you know, we know the DS outsold, you know, obviously the GBA era of handheld consoles, but this is the handheld console I remember growing up with, and I had a Game Gear at the time, so I had like no games to choose from. No friends, because nobody wanted to play Game Gear. My other option was to play with my old Tiger system. I had Contra on it. You got false diagonals in that too when you were moving the D-pad, just like some of these crappy handhelds that we review every once in a while. We're going to go into this video assuming that you either already ordered or are waiting to order because you haven't decided what color you want, an SP from Anbernic. Anybody who's going to be watching this video is going to be one of those people. I'd find it very rare in this instance where this handheld has been out this long, and I'm finally getting around to doing a review on it, and that's not who we're going to be tailoring this to. But just like any one of these reviews, we are going to go through everything real quick. There's not a whole lot of testing or anything we need to do. We know what this thing can do, so we mostly can just talk about this device today, which is it's really exciting. It's one of those cool things that we don't really get to do a whole lot of. You know, we kind of touch on it, but we don't really get to dig in very deep. There's some really special things with this handheld, and there's also some kind of things that aren't great about it, but there are some fixes for some of those things as well. So we will kind of dab into that a little bit. We're not going to do anything with it today, but we will discuss some of the options that are out there for you if you are just waiting by your mailbox right now to get this. But for those of you who haven't ordered one yet, mostly because you can't decide what color you want, and you saw that there was a blue one in the thumbnail, we're going to go through everything here for you real quick. We're going through the I/O. We always start here at the top. We do have our shoulders left and right. We do have an HDMI hole and a C hole. That damn C hole, which finds their way around here all the time. On the bottom here, we do have a removable battery in a battery compartment, which is really nice. I do really like that. On the right-hand side over here, we do have our power and reset button. And then on the left, we do have our volume up and down. On the bottom down here, we do have both of our SD holes, and we do have our 3.5 hole for hooking up headphones. So we are good to go right there. Now, you don't have anything right here on the front because it is a flip. And I probably should have, before I started making this video, put a sticker or something behind here, but you can actually remove this plate and customize it if you have one of the translucent options, either the blue or the black. Right here on the inside, we have a couple extra buttons. So this is actually laid out, it's exactly the same as an SP, except for the SP doesn't have 4 buttons right here. It only has 2. And you can see by my macro that I rebuilt. So this plays GBA games. This used to be a DSL, but it had a broken screen, so I turned it into a macro. And so the button layout would be the same as that. And that's all I play on that is GBA games. That's the closest thing to a GBA I've ever actually owned. So right here we do have our function or menu button. We do have start and select. All these buttons are real clicky. These are all switches, right? Even these are switches, right? So our face buttons are switches. Everybody's been complaining about how loud they are and how hard they are to push down. I didn't really realize it. Like, I was like, what is everybody talking about? But I usually only play it, you know, when I'm waiting online or something. You know, this is one of these devices it should be pocketable, right? I'm gonna carry around my Retro Pocket Flips, so this should easily be pocketable. So if I'm waiting in line at the grocery store, waiting to pick the kids up from school, which summertime now, I'm already ready for them to go back to school, but it doesn't wear you out a whole lot. Until, well, we'll talk about it here in a little bit. And then we do have our D-pad. Also, this doesn't have a whole lot of circular movement, which is kind of unfortunate. Now, last time I made one of these videos, I got yelled at for not going through the specs, even though it was for that one person. But you know what? I like that one person. I don't even know who you are, but I like you. So we are going to go through the specs just for you. And there is one thing that's specifically different about this. And it's not going to be on the spec sheet, but we will talk about it. And you know what? Part of that is it does take 30 seconds for this thing to boot up. So we will start booting it up, and then we will go through the specs here real quick. This is a 3.5-inch IPS full-view OCA 640x480 display. It is running the now legendary H700 quad-core ARM processor with the Cortex-A53 dual-core G31 GPU. It's got 1 GB of LPDDR4 RAM. It remembers about 64 GB worth of the time. And all up in its expansion slot is up to a 512 max. It actually says that you can put a 512 in the primary. Don't do that. That's why I left it off the spec sheet, because if you put a 512 in the primary, you can only format that card to 64 gigs for your games. So you're going to be screwed. You're going to just lose it all. That's one really weird thing about Anbernic's operating system right now. And that accessible battery is a 3300 milliamp battery. Good for about 8 hours. It's actually probably good for about 7.5 hours I've seen out of this thing. So it's pretty good. Charging is 5 volt and 1.5 amp, which is weird because most are 2 amp. And it does support C2C charging, but just like every other Anbernic, it's going to be a little picky about it. It's a good thing it didn't come with the brick. It does have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it's Bluetooth 4.2. It is only for controllers. There is no audio profile for it. I've heard recently people thinking like the R36S was going to get an audio profile somewhere for Bluetooth. I don't know how that's possible because it's actually built into the actual hardware, not necessarily just the software. Also, it's a licensing thing, so I would love to see them get that. But that is the specs for you here real quick. For the sake of time, we are this a shorter video because we don't really need to see a whole lot of gameplay footage. We've seen it on all of them, right? Well, I guess I moved them all. I wanted to go and show off the GBA type stuff. But it does outperform the Powkitty V90 even when it's running custom firmware on the V90, which is pretty impressive. We'll just go through. The operating system is pretty much the same. It is on the newest OS when you get it. As if you got it today and we're watching this video today, it would be on the newest OS. I am actually creating a firmware landing page, which will be like a repository for links for all the firmwares that are out there. I think I got 42 that I've added to it so far. And I will maybe post that down here so that if you guys have any ideas of firmwares that I'm missing, let me know. And I can get some links up for those. There's obviously specifics for different devices. There's some like Amulec. There's for the 351V because that's where it started. And then, you know, there's going to be Amulec for the R36 or something, whatever. But, there's different versions. I'm mostly just trying to get to their main landing page, and then you can sort it out from there unless it's specified to be separated from the landing page. And that's why I keep thinking the R36S. It's actually a separate landing page of its own. It is a fork of the original. If it's a fork, cool. I'll throw that on there too. And then I'll just list what device it's for. Otherwise, it's just listed off all the different operating systems. So if somebody's like, oh, you can throw Onion on there. What? No way. It's a Mio Mini Plus, right? Yeah, cool. All right, so you can go click on the Onion button, and it'll bring you to Onion OS, and you can download it. Or if you go to Jealous, rest in peace, Jealous. If you go to Rocknix, you can just choose which download package you need right off that main page. So I think it'll make it a little easier for me, and that's all I care about. No, I care about you guys too, but this will be the first rendition of this. I can always update it in the future. I will throw the link down there. It might not be down there right when I launch the video because I am trying to update it right now, but it will be down there here within the next day or so. And if you go on there and you see something I'm missing, shoot me a message and I will add it. If I have time, I'll even add like a submit form on there. I'm going to say right now, probably not going to happen, but if I do, I'll put a submit form at the bottom for you. There isn't any good custom firmware for this yet. Not to say that the custom firmware works poorly. Problem that we're running into right now is there is a magnet in here. I don't know why they call this a Hall magnet, by the way. Anbernic is calling this a Hall magnet. Now that we have Hall effect sticks, everything has to be Hall. We have Hall triggers, you know, all this stuff. They're calling this a Hall magnet. Maybe it is. I have to look up the definition because I thought I knew what the definition was. This ain't it, but that magnet right there, which puts this into standby. Now the problem is, as you can see the green light on, and you can have this turned off, by the way. This is in the settings. You can turn off this green light, but when it's in standby, you lose about 3 to 5% battery every hour. So it is nice that it just goes right up because it does take about 30 seconds to load up, right? So you do have an advantage there. It really depends on if you want to make it through the day or not, because if you just leave this in standby all day, it will be dead in the morning. You really don't even have to really play on it when you're losing 3 to 5% an hour. It goes pretty quickly. I don't know what 24 times 5 is, but I know it's a lot of numbers. Oh, it's 124, isn't it? Yeah, that's sad. I could have just easily done that in my head like I just did. Okay. Oh, so what we are seeing in the firmware, custom firmware, is it's just shutting it down. And I'm pretty confident it's MinUI that is trying to create a firmware right now where it will go into standby when you close it, and then after a certain amount of minutes or time, then it will shut down to save battery life. That would be sweet. You might even see Anbernic implement that. I don't know if you've noticed with Anbernic firmware, and I've talked about this on a couple other Anbernic devices recently, their stock firmware is pretty much better than most of the third-party firmware that we have out there. Reason being, obviously it's their device. I don't know if they hired somebody else. On the 35xxH, I run stock OS and plus a modifier OS on top of it so that I can get some of the perks that you would get. Also some better optimization for PSP and stuff like that. Anbernic has actually been implementing that into their factory builds. If you go into Modified OS right now and you read through it, most of the updates are being done to remove things from Modified OS that Anbernic has now built into the build. They've had a really bad relationship with devs for a long time, Anbernic and the developer community. I don't know that this is giving them any brownie points, but if nothing else, they're listening to the community now, which is pretty awesome. And what a good time to do it when they're having probably the best run I've ever seen by Anbernic. I can't believe that they're not hitting duds here. They're just knocking these handhelds out, and they're printing them out about every 2 to 3 weeks, and they just aren't missing right now. It is absolutely insane. I've never seen Anbernic do that. I've never seen Powkitty launch 2 in a row that were good. I don't know. I can't remember what came between the RGB30 and the 20SX, but the Max, that was good too. Yeah, that came in the middle. Yeah, so I'm talking like I'm talking to somebody else. Like, I'm just having a conversation with myself. I'm talking to my plant, my little shark plant over here. We're just having a conversation. By the way, Shark Week's coming up. My favorite time of the year. I always take it off work every year, so you might not see videos that week. So Anbernic is really just nailing it right now. It is crazy. But there are some things about this device that I don't really like, and I know that's what people are going to be on here waiting for, is for me to rip this thing apart. I don't have a lot of bad things to say, honestly. I didn't notice these buttons because I wasn't playing it a lot, like I had said earlier. Like, I played in short bursts, and that's typically whatever is in my pocket. Otherwise, I have a satchel that carries like my Steam Deck and my Switch and stuff that I carry on my back. But there's always a device in my pocket, and that's what I've been using this for. And not only are they loud, and I noticed it in bed the other night. I was really worried about waking my wife up because I hadn't really noticed it until I was in bed, and even the TV was on, and I could still hear these buttons just clicking over the top of the sound of the TV. You know, they're not bad. I've done work. I've reviewed worse before, but the biggest thing about it isn't even necessarily the sound. It's how much pressure you have to put on them in order to use the button. So if you're just finger banging on a beat 'em up, it's like you're working out. You start sweating, you know, you get a little stiff, you know, stop and remember to stretch your hammies too. But it really is, it's exhausting to play on here sometimes. There are some fixes out there for at least the noise. I'm gonna play around with maybe some other stuff on here just to see if there isn't a way that we can make it a little bit better, a little softer maybe to touch, because it is a lot of effort. And I don't know how to even show it, but sometimes you don't get what you're going for. Even on the D-pad, like, you try to select stuff and it won't go. It's very similar, though not broken. This is an intentional problem because they wanted to make it like the Game Boy Advance SP. It's similar to a recent review I did on the R40S, where that only hits like 1 out of every 10 buttons when you're doing it on the face button. Now, this isn't nearly as bad, but that's what it's reminding me of. And that might just be because that device has been haunting me for a few days now. And I've been ripping through a lot of stuff on there, trying to get that to be a real usable device. So hopefully we'll have an answer for you here shortly. But anyways, back to these buttons, because this is for those people that are waiting for theirs to come. Yeah, your buttons are going to suck. Myself and some other creators are working on multiple solutions right now in order to fix that. Do you think I might have seen when I was on Retro Handheld Discord updating my creator page? I think that I might have seen somebody might have actually fixed the buttons. It might be on their website. I didn't get a chance to look before this, but if I can find it on there, I will throw a link down on my thingamabob for you to the Retro Handheld website if there is a button fix on there. And now that I'm done rambling about buttons, other than that, this handheld is near perfection, minus one other thing. It's not really that pocketable. So you look at a V90, and this easily fits in your pocket. This is more or less the same size of an actual Game Boy Advance. I think it might be a titch smaller, I'm not sure. This, though, is harder to carry around than a Mio Mini, for example, because of its thickness. It's very pocketable, but a Mio Mini fits in your pocket better than this does. I'm just trying to give you an example, hopefully that tracks. This here is obvious, I don't know why I just put that back down. Obviously quite a bit thicker. So this is actually taking up more space. Also, it's very wide in comparison to some of the handhelds that we put in our pocket. If you were to take a Mio Mini, by example, look at it, it's so much wider and it's so much thicker. These take it on in length. And there was a good example about this recently with Anbernic in general, is when the 35xxH came out. It's actually more pocketable than the 35xx Plus, which nobody saw that coming. Going to a horizontal handheld and actually have it be more pocketable. Again, thinner, more laid out. And the last comparison I'll make on this, just because I said I was going to right away, is the Retroid Pocket Flip. Look at that. I don't know if you can see it on camera. Maybe you can't. And I still haven't replaced the batteries in my thingamabobber, but it is 5 millimeters thinner or so. I think it's about 5 millimeters. And then again, this one's longer, right? So this is thicker. Again, it's wider, it's thicker. It is the same though if you're on the shoulder buttons. Then it's the same pretty much thickness, as you can see, more or less. But the shoulder buttons only take up a very small area, and that's only because there's this ridge right here. So, and this slides in out of your pocket so well because it's just so smooth and rounded. This is a very square device to be putting in and out of your pocket. Fits really well in your back pocket though. It's probably like every guy who's ever had a wallet, their first wallet, if they used it for any significant amount of time, they probably never threw their receipts away, and their butt always went numb because they had a wallet this thick or thicker. So it's good that we have those pockets that were made for wallets, because this will go right in that back pocket. Now, I also don't know what the right solution for a case is, but this is not it. This thing is, I mean, we're already having an issue right here being pocketable, right? I mean, this is good for putting in your bag, which is what I'll use it for when I'm not playing with it. If I have another device with me and still want to carry this with me, that's fine. That'll work great for that, but for your daily use, I mean, seriously, why is this so big? And another example of this is the 35xxH. This is what I carry my 35xx, I can't say it today. This is what I carry my H in. Again, thinner. In fact, it's still even thinner than this device is when it's in the case. And then it's long, obviously, right? But it's not as wide, and it's thinner. More pocketable in the case than this is without the case. But it can't be all bad, right? Even without the case or with the case, it's still not nearly as unpocketable as my Steam Deck. And you know, every time you go onto anything on Reddit and you say, I just want a quick pocketable device with limited retro emulation. Oh, I caught a mouse. Hey, stay away. And it was like, get a Steam Deck. And I'm like, that's not what I asked, simpleminded11235 at yahoo.com. I already have one of those. I want something that fits in my pocket. I don't want to do a ton of gameplay footage on this, but I will throw a couple games up on here for you guys, and I'm just going to blow through a few. I'm actually going to leave everything on the stock settings, just because this is how it would be to a consumer coming out of the box, and then I will tweak it on my next video when I do a follow-up to this one. One thing that I would love to point out, though, is that if you look at the Game Boy Advance when you're playing it, you will actually see where it will write out Game Boy Advance across the bottom, just like a real Game Boy Advance. If I had a real Game Boy Advance, that's actually part of the screen, where here, it just uses that little extra bit of real estate because it's fixing the aspect ratio. But there are some really weird filters and things on some of the stuff on here, and the reason being that those filters and things are on here is to make the games perform better in most instances, or make them look like they did before. They may add the weird shadow effects, things like that. If you want a cleaner game experience, we will go through a video on how to fix all that stuff. Again, that's just not going to be this video, because I'm already taking up a lot of your time today. Now, we're going to play a couple of games, but before we do, just be aware, this does have that weird Anbernic software game thing where you have a games folder and then you have an RA folder. The only thing you're going to want to play on this in the games folder is going to be a PSP, giving you more independent access to the PPSSPP emulator. Other than that, everything else you should be playing in the RA folder. And the general rule is always PlayStation and under always goes through the RA folder. So just a general rule. We'll take a look at a couple of games. I didn't fix this weird filtering. There's this weird scan filter thing that's on here, which is actually helping boost the FPS on these games. I didn't change that at all on here because I didn't realize that was a thing until after I filmed this footage. So that is not going to be fixed on here for this, but it is something that can happen, and I will probably make a guide on how to do that going forward. But let's take a look. So that'll give you just a little sample of what you can do with this. A couple of things that you may not have noticed while filming the video. If you are going to play N64 or Dreamcast and you need to use a joystick, you just single tap the power button and it will switch the D-pad into a joystick, so it goes into joystick mode. It also works with the C buttons and things like that on those controllers. I am here to tell you though that I absolutely love this handheld. It is crazy. So I just wanted to point out any of the shortcomings obviously, but there is so many positives on this as well. And again, it is a clamshell, so it does fit in your pocket. It just doesn't fit in your pocket like I expected it to. How about that? It didn't fit like I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be a more loose fit, but that's okay. I've carried my Odin in my pocket, so it's not like it's the worst in the world. It's just, it's a weird, awkward shape because of how thick and wide it is. It's a tuna can in your pocket is what it is, in the shape of a deck of cards. But it has all the good things that come with all the 35XX devices, including the 28XX device as well, all the H700 SoCs. It has all the perks of those. It's way more comfortable. I personally think it's more comfortable than the RG35xx Plus, the one that's spelled out with a P, not the one with the plus sign, the one that's spelled out with a P. Is that confusing? You think it's confusing? Try reviewing these things. Go tell Anbernic. But I just want to reiterate one more time. This has a lot of good things going for it. I absolutely love it. Likely going to be my mostly go-to. I used to carry around the V90 all the time, and I get excited every time I get an opportunity to test some new firmware on it because they are going through a bunch of beta stuff. Again, in the software link down below. They're on version 2 beta right now. A little trickier than 1. If you find version 1 beta, you might want to try that one first because beta 2 you actually have to build yourself right now. But it's a Mio custom firmware that it goes onto the V90, and it's really, it makes it a little bit more intuitive. But for a $30 handheld, sometimes cheaper, sometimes $35, it does a lot. It plays up to PS1, and there is a PS1 perfect settings library pretty much out there for the top 100 games. You're almost better off doing it on the V90 because there's a list of configurations that have been set by the community, so it puts it in. All your emulator settings are set perfectly for that particular device. If you just want a cool clamshell that you can play your Game Boy Advance, and then you get some bonuses as far as all the other systems that it can play. Not my favorite for fighting games, but for anything else, good to go. While you're waiting for yours to come in the mail, have you already set up your memory card? Just curious. I know I always set up mine before they come, but again, I have a lot of these devices, these 35XX devices. I've got a ton of them, so I'm actually using the memory card in this one because I forgot this time. This is why I'm bringing this up. I'm using the one out of one of my 35XXHs in here. Obviously, everything transfers over just fine, and all I did was plug it in, but it's kind of neat that you can do that. If you don't have your memory card set up right now, what are you going to put on there? I'm looking for some new fun games to play that I just haven't played yet that would play on something like this. So if you're unfamiliar with the channel, every time I get a new handheld, I pick a specific game for that handheld. I'll play some other ones on it too, but there's one specific game and I try to beat that game on that handheld, and that forces me to continue to play with that handheld, so I continue to almost review it, sort of. But then when I'm testing out new software and things like that, I have something to compare it to specifically to that handheld versus comparing it to how it runs on another handheld. I imagine you are as impressed by this as I am, and if not, that's cool too. Let me know down in the comment section below what you think about the Anbernic RG35xxSP. I'm glad they did add 2024 to it. You know, next year's model isn't going to be the SP2, it'll be the 2025 version, the way that Anbernic does their naming schemes. One thing I did forget to touch right at the beginning as I'm closing out here is that this screen does actually interlock in a couple different places. If you play with this in bed though, you do not want to lock it all the way back, even though it is kind of a neat position when you're standing up or sitting up or whatever like this, or it makes it easier for me to demonstrate and you guys can see what I'm filming from above. But as soon as you start to lean back, it tips into your face, so you don't want to do that too much. Also, the screen doesn't get super dim, so it is a little bit bright depending on how close you want it to your head. I'm just going to add a whole bunch of crap here right at the end for absolutely no reason because I will have a follow-up video pretty quick after this one. I just wanted to make sure I got something out because I've been sitting on this for a while and I just haven't had time. And also, this handheld got stuck in customs for almost a week. I've had a few handhelds recently just go to the clink. I don't know what that's all about. So this is as dark as it gets. I guess you can't tell because I have all these lights on it, but it's not super dark, right? I guess maybe you get a good comparison by putting it back. So I actually just had it on level 4 before. It does get pretty bright. I wouldn't say outside sunshine bright, but it does get pretty bright. Good cloudy day bright, or overcast day maybe. Overcast day bright. But anyways, that's all I got for today. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share this video with your friends because sharing helps grow the channel, and you guys are killing it, man. You guys are really helping us grow this channel, so I really appreciate it. You know, the more we grow, the more things I'm able to get so I can do reviews for you guys, and that just gives us a leg to stand on in order to be able to get some of these products, in order to do these reviews. Without you, this channel wouldn't exist, and without your friends that you're going to need to subscribe to this, we wouldn't be able to do some of the things we're going to do here in the future. And if you find yourself bored right now, there is a couple of videos up on the screen that Google put up there for you that it's choosing. If you haven't watched them already, give it a chance. Go take a look. Otherwise, if you have watched them already, maybe you want to watch it again. But anyways, that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.